Okay, we'll wait about 30 more seconds and then we'll get rolling. Okay. So can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I got
Yeah, we can hear you.
yes. I got a yes from Lindsay. I see some yeses. Thank you. So good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's late August and school is up and running. We've had a great start so far with upper school athletics already starting. And then this week, we had a great day today with the ninth graders who had their first day of orientation. And as you all know, it's going to be a very busy week as we have more orientations and meetings and things like that. And we get started with lower school on Thursday. So I'm going to get rolling here. I'm going to try really hard to keep us on task and make sure that we don't stretch longer than we have to. There'll be a decent amount of information in here, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. So let's do that. Sorry, hold on one second. That's better. Okay. So just so you see who else is on the call tonight, obviously we've got lots of parents. I see that we have some faculty and staff members, but folks who might be able to answer questions that you all have will be here as well. So the COVID team is me, Mary Fielder, Cindy Hooper, and Jamie Valker. Our academic administrators are on as well. And I believe we have some members of the medical advisory team should we need some assistance from them. So I'm going to try not to talk for too long and leave plenty of room for questions. So during the webinar, if you have a question, please put it into the chat. I am about 90% sure that I have it set so your chat questions will only go to those of us who are co-hosts of the webinar, and we can kind of allocate them out to those people who are going to be able to best answer them. If you have a question for a specific person, feel free to put that into your question as well. And obviously, we will do our very best to answer as many as we can. But if we don't get to every question, we'll follow up individually. The appropriate person will follow up with you. We are recording, so that we have a record of this, and we should have a record of your questions as well. Here's what I think we're going to hit in the next 15 or 20 minutes or so is just a quick introduction to the start of school, some nuts and bolts, some health and safety highlights, obviously top of people's mind, and then we'll have time for questions. And the one thing that I want to emphasize is that we have, almost 120 new students in the school this year. So I know that a number of you are new to North Shore, and you're hearing parts of this information for the first time. This is not an exhaustive presentation. Tomorrow morning, following all of this, we'll send out a more detailed document that'll provide a lot of details for some of the things that we're just going to skate over in some ways tonight. I'm hoping this is going to be an overview. Obviously, we can dig into questions. And then the other caveat is that things are, once again, changing quickly. So we will continue, I'm sure, to see things evolve, and we'll continue to communicate as that happens. So I would encourage you, as I did in the last email that I sent, if you are new to North Shore, we left the reopening document from last August up on the website. That'll give you really in-depth approach to how we did things last year. Hopefully provide you some confidence that we have done this before. This is not our first rodeo. And this is really to talk about some of the things that have changed. Okay, so here we go. Hot off the presses, that picture on the bottom left today, upper school ready for the class of 2025 to arrive. And then there are some of our JK friends from last year who are now SK friends. So again, I'm not going to read through everything, but many of the things that we did last year to keep school open and safe are obviously things that we're doing again this year. Things like masks everywhere indoors, social distancing, relying on our HVAC, which is excellent across the campus, being really alert to students who are showing symptoms of illness. That's where the partnership with you parents is so important. And also, as we introduced in the second semester last year, saliva testing. Those are some of the things that helped us last year. They will help us this year. This year, we are back in person, back to a regular academic calendar, daily and weekly calendar. Some of the things that are new, we are not doing the daily health check via app, but we are asking parents, and you'll hear more about this a little bit later, asking you to be, again, particularly vigilant about keeping your children home if they are feeling sick. And there is some detail about those symptoms in this, and then there'll be a lot more in the document to come out tomorrow. Social distancing still continues to be important. It has been changed in schools to 3 feet from 6 feet. That was true last spring and is still true. Different this year is we have very little remote learning access offered. I'll speak about that specifically. We now have a chunk of our population that is vaccinated, and we are continuing to use our saliva testing program, just in a slightly different form. So that's a little preview of some of what's to come. Hold on. Okay. So here we are, academic program, as I said, back to the normal schedule, continued use of outdoor spaces. And one of the things that I think I know our teachers are excited about is that the classrooms are also, again, a little bit more flexible. Obviously, we're going to continue to monitor how things are going, but we started last year very rigid about, how classrooms could move, how students could move, how teachers could engage. And we feel good that we've got a little bit more flexibility this year. Sorry, my computer is a little bit. Lunch. We will again partner with Hand-Cut Foods. Hand-Cut has been our service provider for foods for quite a long time. The good news, I think, is that they learned a lot last year, like everybody else. They will continue to provide us with a lot of hot and cold options. And it is, again, a pre-order system. We will not have lunch available like usual, just kind of walk up to the servery and crowd into that little space. That's not a good idea. So we'll all be able to order lunches ahead of time. The only place where that is not true is for JK and SK. As we did last year, we're going to have our JK and SK friends bring their lunches to school because they will not be going to the cafeteria for their lunches. Also, Hand Cut Foods, I am told, did a big upgrade on their website. So if, like me, you were somewhat frustrated with the Hand Cut website last year, they promise that it has been improved, and we should all be getting an email tomorrow from Hand Cut to be able to sign up for meals with greater choices. There will also be a new possibility open for our upper schoolers, which is a just grab and go food kiosk in a separate location where they can grab a snack, grab a sandwich or a salad and go. They don't even have to go to the order ahead place. Okay. The athletic program in the upper school has already been running since August 9th, and the preseason is over and we are starting contests. I understand there was a nice win by the varsity boys soccer team a little earlier today. So the athletics program is running. We continue to use our COVID mitigations, especially on buses and trips and things like that. And indoors, of course, there is masking this season that really applies to our volleyball teams more than anything else. And we have also, just for those of you in particular who are new, here's a little bit of detail. We're back to our general practice, our normal practice schedules and our normal team offerings for the upper and middle school. And we are still looking into whether or not we can offer a cross-country option for our 5th grade friends. And we'll learn more about that in the next week or so. You can always find information about practices and games on My North Shore. And in addition, you should be getting, if you're a parent of a team member, you should be getting weekly emails. Okay. I'm going to actually stop for a second before I go there. Want to check the chat. If you have any questions just about this first portion, academics, lunches, classes, I'm going to take a quick look. So let's see. Okay, here I'm going to do this for a second so I can see the chat more fully. Let's see. I have a question to share the slides. Yes, I'm going to share, after this is over, I'm going to share the slides and the whole presentation. I'll share the video with the opening document and the slides, so you all have access to that. I have one question that's health related that I'll save for a little bit later. How will lunch work for the lower school for the first couple of weeks since we have been able to pre-order? So this week, lower schoolers will be asked to bring lunch to school Thursday and Friday. And we should be able to, you should be able to order automatically. Sorry, not automatically. You should be able to order with the email that's coming out supposedly tomorrow from Hand Cut Foods. Actually, 2 questions. I think I made a mistake on that slide. We do also offer middle school volleyball. And as Caitlin McLennan just reminded me, there is no lower school lunch on Thursday because it's a half day. So our lower schoolers only need to bring lunch this week on Friday. I'm going to keep going. Why is no app attestation required this year? We're just relying on parents and students to monitor symptoms without going through all of the steps of the app. There have been some studies done at schools that were using them over the course of last year that show that they really did not make an appreciable difference in outcomes at school. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I have a question here. I might send this to Caitlin McLennan or Tim Sheehan, which says, will students from different cohorts be able to sit together and how many per table? So maybe if Tim or Caitlin want to pick that one up.
I can pick that one up, Tom. This is Tim Sheehan. Students from cohorts will sit together. They will not cross cohorts. So the plan initially is that kids will stay in their cohort 2 to a table.
Okay. Two to a table is one of the really important mitigation strategies for lunch, which is obviously one of the areas that we've paid the most attention to. Okay. So I'm going to jump back in and let's see. And then I'll go on with the health portion and then we'll keep going. Let's see, where is, hold on a sec. Back to that. This is one of the annoying things about Zoom, particularly when you're sharing a presentation. So here we go. Share. Okay. So obviously one of the main reasons we're here is just to update you on some of the key elements that we are employing this year. All of our medical decisions are guided by this group of people who are our medical advisory team. They are the first line of defense, and they help those of us who are in the administration and working directly with students, faculty, and staff to try to make good decisions that keep everybody's health and safety in the forefront. So almost all of these folks have parents, have students in the school right now, and they continue to be an amazing group for us and provide excellent, thoughtful advice. And I believe there's a few of them on the call, and we can call on them if we need to. These are some of the organizations that we use as we are gathering our data, and it is changing constantly. In particular, those things that are in bold on the left are sources that we depend greatly on. So obviously there's questions around vaccinations that we wanted to share with you. So first of all, something that I'm very happy about. Already 97% of our faculty and staff are fully vaccinated. We only have a few folks left. That number is continuing to grow. And I think that is amazing and wonderful, and I'm very pleased about that. We are estimating that about 75% of our eligible student population is vaccinated. It might be higher in certain classes. Why do we not know for sure? Frankly, we need you parents to finish your Magnus forms. If your Magnus forms aren't complete or you haven't uploaded a vaccination form, we don't have the best data. So the vast majority of folks have done this, but there are still folks in each class that have not. And so it's hard to get a real handle on the data. We are now picking people off one by one and reaching out and calling to confirm vaccination status. And I know that number is going to continue to grow as well. I think really importantly, and I've said this in some of my messages, but we believe in the vaccines. We are strongly encouraging everybody to get the vaccines. If we do not have confirmation of vaccination status, we will consider a student to be unvaccinated. And what that means is that there will be a different outcome if, for instance, you are found to be a close contact to someone who gets COVID. Vaccinated and unvaccinated people have different quarantine expectations. And that's just one example. So I know that we have a lot of people who just have not updated their forms and who have not turned in that information, asking please, please, please that you do so, and do so in the next day or two. And that really helps us to get a very clear sense of where we are class by class. We can go very granularly, and our nurse, Jamie Valker, is monitoring every single one. We are not currently, I had one question in the chat about vaccines and news today. We are currently not mandating vaccinations, but it is a high topic every time the medical advisory team meets, and we will have another meeting very soon. I will note that the FDA news today that the Pfizer vaccine is now fully approved, which is a big difference than an emergency use authorization. That is true only for the ages of 16 and above. So from ages 12 through 15, no vaccine has been officially approved yet by the FDA. And that, I think, will make a difference. I'm going to take a second and let's see, pause. And just checking on few questions here. Let me see. So I had one question here about what are the quarantine differences between vaccinated and those who are not? I think I just mentioned one of the main ones. One of the things I think that's also really different is if you are the sibling, for instance, of a student who is diagnosed with COVID. Last year, as many of you will remember, even if you had a symptom, even if a student was symptomatic, all of the siblings would immediately need to go home until somebody was tested. That is no longer true if someone is vaccinated. So if, for instance, my son has symptoms and I send him home, Jamie sends him home, my daughter who is vaccinated does not have to automatically go home, does not have to quarantine. That, I think, to that question is one of the really significant differences, and one of the things for parents that will really matter in terms of how long somebody might have to stay out. And at least it's while you are having to get tested, for instance. Here's a question about COVID testing. That's the next slide. Is the 3 feet distancing guideline factoring the Delta variant, which has emerged more recently and is more aggressive? It is. We have not had any change. None of the guidance for schools has changed around the social distancing. If that does change, we will reevaluate. But we also know that 3 to 6 feet has been deemed by the studies last year, which were not around Delta. That is true, to be very safe, particularly in areas where there is masking and where there is good air ventilation. But let me stop and ask Cindy Hooper if she is on the call and can jump in. Cindy,
Hi, everyone.
is that correct?
The call. Yes, right now, Tom, you're exactly right. There's been no counter or another iteration of the guidance. It still is 3 to 6 feet, 3 feet with that. And indoors with our mask on and our incredible ventilation system that we have, 3 to 6 feet is easily accomplished indoors for our facilities.
Let's see. Why would quarantine not be implemented for a vaccinated student who is exposed when we know that they can still be infected and spread the Delta variant? I think it is basically based upon whether someone is symptomatic or not. Jamie, do you want to jump in and address the difference between if someone simply has symptoms versus someone who is confirmed with COVID, and what happens to a sibling, for instance?
I'm sorry, can you
So
repeat that?
Yeah, so is there, back to the sibling question, which is obviously important for parents. Is there a difference between the sibling of someone who just has symptoms and we don't know their COVID status versus the sibling of someone who is a confirmed COVID case?
For a vaccinated student,
Yes.
the vaccinated student, as long as the vaccinated student remains asymptomatic themselves, they do not need to quarantine when a sibling is symptomatic and being evaluated, or if a sibling was found to be positive. They do recommend that even if vaccinated, they get tested 3 to 5 days after exposure to a positive.
Right, just to be sure.
Right. But they don't
Um,
have to quarantine.
and some of what I want to do is keep moving on the full slideshow, because a lot of these very specific questions will be addressed in the document that comes out tomorrow, with sort of a lot of detail. One, I think that is important, though. I did get a question here. What is the protocol for unvaccinated siblings with one sick with COVID symptoms waiting for a test? If siblings are unvaccinated and someone has symptoms, they will all be sent home just like they were last year. That was one of the primary reasons that we did very well in school, and that we will keep doing. And the reality is, for someone who is vaccinated or unvaccinated, if they are showing symptoms in school, we are going to send them home like we did last year. So I want to make sure that everybody's clear about that. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and then I have to share my screen again. This is quite annoying, pardon me. And let's see. There we go. Okay. This is a little bit, go back. So here's what we're talking about. Anybody who is symptomatic needs to stay home and get cleared before coming to campus. The same is going to be true of students who are symptomatic at school, and we send them home. That is one of the single most important mitigation strategies that we have. And it may seem like there is a quick trigger finger for us to send kids home, and that is true. And that's going to be important to keep all of us as healthy as we can. Part of that, also part of our process this year, will be saliva testing again. And there's one or two little differences in this, and this is all in the document also that you get tomorrow morning. We had good luck using our saliva screening protocols last year. We're going to do it again. It will look almost exactly the same. There are a few differences because we are using a different program through the University of Illinois that most schools in the state are going to be using. There is a slight lag time in that whole program ramping up because they're doing it for so many schools. We've already been approved by that program, but we won't be able to start it in full for another 2 or 3 weeks. So what we're going to do this week, within the next week, is we are going to do a saliva screening just like we did last year, using the same company that we used last year. That's going to serve for us as our kind of back to school check-in. So students will be in school. That is true. Thursday, our lower schoolers will be here half day. They'll be in all of our other protocols. They will get their supplies on Thursday and bring their samples to school on Friday. The same process will be true for the middle school and the upper school at the beginning of next week. And then we will, as we did last year, we will share out results. We have a whole protocol if someone does test, if something needs to go and be further tested or test positive. But we're very excited that we're going to be able to do the saliva testing again this year. It's a pain to do, not going to lie. But I think especially this year, we weren't expecting to be doing it, but we're very glad to have it as one of the tools in our toolkit. So more information will be coming home, and look for supplies to be coming home just like last year with your students, either on Thursday or on Monday. And we will follow up accordingly. This is a very brief summary. But these are sort of the steps of what would happen should we have a confirmed case in school. We did this last year. Many of you were involved at different stages of this. But we are simply going to continue to be vigilant, and we're going to continue to send kids home if they're sick, make sure that they get PCR tests before they come back. We have all the isolation and quarantine procedures that we will lay out, and the procedures for returning to school. And I can't stress enough that it is unbelievably important for parents, and I am a school parent as well, to be vigilant about symptomatic kids, not sending them to school, and following through on all of the testing and isolation protocols. I'm going to keep going. I don't have too much more, and then I'll hit the chat, and then I'm sure we'll have a lot more questions. Whoops, sorry. Now we go back. One slide that it looks like I deleted by accident has to do with travel. And as you know, this was a major pain last year as travel guidance continued to change, and we were doing our very best to make sure that we were keeping kids as safe as possible. The travel guidance from Chicago changed again, I think 2 days ago, and it changed in some significant ways. So the travel guidance for months and months and months has basically been, if you travel, have a test before you come back. Cook County, which is who we follow for our medical guidance, has now changed it to say, if you're traveling to certain hotspots, different color states on the map, you need to not only be tested, but also quarantine at home. That is a very late change for schools. And it is not, we're not going to immediately embrace that protocol. But what we are asking is, don't travel. So we are going to ask you for sure to, if you do travel, to have a negative PCR test before you come back. And then after Labor Day, with everybody getting enough warning, we will shift to follow the full guidance by Cook County in terms of travel. So I'm going to stop now, stop share, and then answer some of these questions and get some other help here. So in the chat. Sorry, let me catch up to where we were. Three feet guidance, quarantine difference, sorry. Yes, periodic COVID testing. Unvaccinated siblings. Here's a question. How do we deal with the common cold, especially with lower school where runny noses are commonplace? Unfortunately, just like last year, most cold symptoms look similar to COVID, and kids would need to get a negative test before they come back. Is that, Jamie, am I right on that?
They actually, towards the spring of last year, and you'll notice that on the list of symptoms, it's not there. They removed congestion and runny nose as two symptoms that would require exclusion. Obviously, if the kid's not, if they're not feeling well and that this is their history, they should stay home. But if this is new for them, then they should be evaluated. Yeah. But
okay.
It's
Great.
not on the list of symptoms, so.
I've gotten one or two questions about the vaccination for teachers. Can I assure that 100% of teachers and staff will have at least one vaccine taken? I cannot do that. There are exceptions to vaccinations. Even when there are mandates, there are exceptions to vaccinations. I can say, and I said very early on the call, that we are at 97% and growing in terms of the number of teachers, faculty, and staff who are vaccinated. And there are, a tiny number of folks who are not yet vaccinated, and there are different reasons for that I'm not, that I can't quite go into, actually. But we are in conversation with everybody, and I think over 150 of our staff have already are fully vaccinated, which I'm feeling really quite good about. How are kids who are sent? These are a couple of good questions here. I feel like I must have skipped. Did I do a slide about remote learning?
No, not yet.
No. It must have. Let me go back. It must have skipped over in one of my my Zoom skips. Hold on one second, folks, and I will pull that up, because there's some questions about how are we supporting kids who are homesick. In the first, let's see, share screen. Present. Let me go back. Here we go. Must have skipped over it. So this is new this year, and I think this is really important to talk about. So last year we did what has come to be called concurrent learning, which is basically that our teachers were teaching all of the students who were right in front of them, and then they were teaching a number of students who were on a screen remotely for the entire year. And that turned out to be perhaps the single most difficult part of teaching last year. And it was incredibly taxing on our teachers. And it also, I think, meant that for teachers, their attention was divided between those who were right in front of them and those who were on the screen. And I will go on a limb and say that our teachers did an unbelievably fantastic job. And I don't know of any schools that are doing the same thing this year for those reasons. So remote learning will not be, and the caveat to all of this is, if our health situation drastically changes, hopefully you all have seen that we are very responsive and that will continue to adapt. But we are currently not planning to offer remote learning in the same way that we offered it last year. There will be some access only for students who are out of school because they are on an extended quarantine or for an extended medical reason. We will not be offering remote learning for a student who is home for a day waiting for a PCR test result. We will not be offering remote learning for a student who has a sinus infection and is home for 2 days. How will we support those students is one of the ways that, one of the questions that I got in the chat. And the answer is the same way that we supported students for 101 years before we had the possibility to Zoom, which is that our teachers will be in contact. They will help provide lessons, provide materials for students. And I think one of the things that is really important to mention is it is not always a great idea for a student who is homesick to be trying to do schoolwork for 7 hours. The main thing that we would like students to do if they are homesick is to rest, sleep, drink a lot of water, and get well. So we have always supported our students who are sick. We have always supported students who have had to travel to a wedding or something like that. But remote learning, like we did it last year, is not something that we're going to be able to sustain this year. When we do have remote learning, it will look a little bit more like attending class, watching class via Zoom, rather than engaging with the teacher back and forth during the class period. In the lower school in particular, we do have one of our teachers who has been tasked this year to support students who are remote learning, students who are out, and that will be one of the tools that we'll be able to use as well. But this is a change, and I think it's a really important one, and I think it's important also to be transparent about it. We will have conversations, I know, over the course of the year with students who do need support, and the academic leadership in each division will be able to help with those conversations. Let me look for other questions here. Let's see. Sorry. I've answered a number of questions here about testing and about remote learning. Good. Travel does not apply to parents. That applies to students. Will you? What sorts of proof will you ask for about household members that travel? Does not apply to household members that travel. For the student, it's going to be an honor system. We have to rely on each other for the collective well-being and safety of our children. So, you know, we are not going to get into the business of monitoring family travel. So what we are asking parents to do is, if their students do travel to a place where Cook County says you need a test, we're going to ask you to get a test. And if it's positive, we're going to ask you to tell us right away so we can do our jobs. And so there's really not much of a better way to do that, or else I'd need to hire 5 people to keep track of, you know, who was at a tennis tournament where for the weekend. Here's a great question. When further tests are required, will you always ask for a PCR test, or are antigen tests acceptable? Just like last year, we only accept PCR tests. Antigen tests have a role, I think, but our medical team was quite strong when we asked this question, that PCRs are the gold standard, and that's what we're going to stick with. One great piece of news, I think, that's helpful if you remember for our saliva testing last year, it was not considered to be a diagnostic test. So if something popped up on your saliva test, you then had to go and get a PCR test. The saliva testing that we are doing this year is a diagnostic PCR saliva test. So if you are positive, this is not true the first week, by the way, but after that, with the new system, if you are positive, you are positive and you do not need to go and get another test. So I think that's helpful. Question about parent volunteers for who are vaccinated and come on campus, Science Olympiad, for example. Right now, we are still not encouraging parents to be on campus for extended periods of time, certainly not in the building. If you are in the building and you are someone who is connected to a program like Science Olympiad, we would expect you to be vaccinated. And while you are working with students, yes, we would most likely in that space add you to the saliva testing list, because your Science Olympiad is a great example. We are not doing lunchroom volunteers this year. There it is. I had a question about the antigen test. So I'm going to kick that one to one of the doctors from the medical team. Could you explain a little bit of the reasoning about why the antigen test is not one that we have accepted? I know there's, I'd have to look at who's in the list, but.
Hi, Tom, this is Jamie. I just want to
Hi.
also, I just want to chime in that the Cook County Department of Public Health is not allowing antigen testing, antigen test results for return to school with symptomatic students.
That's right. And that was the case last year as well, right?
Right. They're not allowing antigen results and they're not allowing in-home tests. So if you go and get like an over-the-counter test and it says negative and you try to submit it, we're not allowed to accept that either. PCR only.
Let's see. I know, I don't mean to call you out, but Chithra, I see that you're on the call. Would you mention something about antigen versus PCR?
Sure. So the antigen test is unfortunately less sensitive. Early in COVID, it was found that there was a high number of false negative results. A PCR test, just by its nature, is just a much more sensitive test and is much more reliable. So that is why the rationale for PCR testing.
And I thank you, but I also do want to mention Jamie's point. Once we have a confirmed case, it is the Cook County contact tracers who take over and help us kind of manage that case. And they were not accepting antigen tests to prove that someone was not had not gotten COVID. So let's see. Let me see. I'm going to Mary, that's a good idea. I'm going to make you the host so then you can help with the questions, but I think I can see them too. Does Cook County take over for contact tracing when a household member is positive but not the student? Jamie or Cindy, I don't know the answer to that one.
We do not report, I do not report family members to Cook County unless they're, teachers or students at our school. They may, once they get into to see where the contact came from, if it was a family member, but I don't report cases of parents and things like that. Did I?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So here's a question that is important from a new parent. What is the saliva testing protocol? Who will be saliva tested? Frequency? So last year we tested, once we began, we tested pretty much every week, every student, faculty and staff, everybody on campus. This year, most likely, we are going to start by testing all of those who are not eligible to be vaccinated or those who have not provided us with proof of vaccination. So we will start there and we will require weekly saliva testing of those folks. And then we'll continue to have more conversations with the medical team about whether it makes sense to continue to broaden that out to weekly testing for the entire school community. There are some different schools of thought on that one.
So Tom, the next question is, once you have a COVID positive in a class, how would you deal with the others in the class? So how would you deal with the contact tracing and the quarantining and all that?
Okay, I'm gonna kick that one to Cindy Hooper. Cindy Hooper is our Director of Operations. She's a certified contact tracer and is the COVID whisperer at school who helps with many of these questions.
Well,
Cindy,
thanks, Tom.
could you make a distinction between, to keep it simple, between a grade where there's not vaccination eligible and grades where, you know, the
Sure.
large majority of kids might be?
This is probably one of the more significant changes for schools is that we will be again asking if we are notified of a positive test in students unvaccinated, we will be asking for the child's schedule, then looking at the classroom seating charts and determining a variety of factors, including physical distancing, mask wearing. If there is consistent use of mask and consistent 3 feet physical distancing, the close contact is less than likely to go home. That is even with unvaccinated students. So the consistent wearing of masks in a highly ventilated room and at least 3 feet of physical distancing more than likely will not require students to have to go home if they are if they have sat next to a positive. Again, it's not as clear cut as that. We gather the information and we sit and we share it with our contact tracer. And sometimes it's diagrams so they understand how our classrooms are laid out, and then they make the determination. But it is very clear in all their writings this year that if we can achieve consistent mask wearing indoors, keep a 3-foot distance and have a highly ventilated room, more than likely we will reduce the amount of close contacts who are affected, vaccinated or unvaccinated.
Next question, Tom, is what happens if a student forgets to submit a saliva sample for a particular week? And I think I can tackle that one. If while we're still using Safeguard, which will be this first week and perhaps one more week or two, we will have that student give a saliva sample right outside the door of the school and collect it then. With Shield, students have to give that saliva sample at school. It's part of the requirement.
Although actually, Mary, that might be evolving.
Oh, good to know. Okay.
So we might be able to provide that.
Okay.
And one thing that I would say is, I didn't want you to waste your time on that. We're hoping that's evolving, but it is the saliva testing. It's a pain for you as parents to get your little kids, especially, to spit into a tube. It's a pain for us at school to handle them all, log them in, you know, do all the work with them, to bring them to the labs, all of that. We are happy to do it, but it takes a significant amount of manpower to track down kids who arrive to campus and don't have their samples with them. So If you were here last year, you remember that you got a text blast every week that saliva samples were due the next morning. It was quite annoying to a number of people, I know, but it's really hard on the back end for us to have to find kids, pull them out of class, and that's not really how we need to be spending our time. So we will ask that we'll communicate well, and then we need the parents to really follow through and help us to remember, for their kids to remember their samples.
And obviously, it's hard on the kids to have to give the sample at school. It's
Yeah,
embarrassing.
they don't like it.
Yeah, it's hard. The next question, will unvaccinated children be required to wear masks on the playground as they were last year? Cindy, director of our summer camp, I'm passing that to you if you want to talk about that.
Mary, I don't believe the school's made a final decision on that based on how recess may work, where mixing of cohorts may happen. So I think at this point it's to be determined in understanding how they'll be organizing those recess play and all of that. So I just haven't circled back with Tim. The cohort model allows for it more than not to be able to take your mask off outside, but we want to maybe start the school year more cautious, and also just again understanding that play with more friends, the whole grade, may have more value to us than a single cohort being alone outside playing together. So I will follow up with Tim and Caitlin on that.
We've got a couple of minutes left. Mary, what else have we got in the queue?
Just one more question came through. Just reading it right now. Why is a PCR test required for travel? To enter the US, you don't need a PCR, and an antigen is sufficient. So why a PCR test?
Jamie, if I'm correct, that's a Chicago and Cook County issue, isn't it?
We were just being consistent with our testing requirements. So not necessarily.
Okay. I'll have to go back and look at the website. I thought that Cook County requested a PCR, but maybe not. Maybe that was just us. But then we're following the guidance of our medical team.
Yeah, we will look into that. And obviously there's a couple follow-up questions to that. Does Cook County, that travel guidance apply to both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals?
All of that, there's a whole section of that we'll send out tomorrow morning in the long doc that will, I hope, also address a lot of these questions. But it's good, I think, to get the exchange and hear, what people are asking.
Yeah. A follow-up question on the saliva testing, saliva samples for lower school this week. We will be sending home on Thursday with your students the test tubes in which they will do their, expectorate their saliva and then return those on Friday morning. So we will provide the kit that has the barcode for the saliva. You just need to send that test tube sealed as well as you can seal it back to school on Friday morning. We will send out a packet to middle and upper school students on Monday. They will bring that home, and on Tuesday, return it. They will bring it home on the 30th and return it the following day for us to test middle and upper school.
Yep.
A couple other questions. If a child is home due to COVID, would they have access to remote learning? And I think, Tom, you had addressed that. For that first day, if we don't know for sure if they have been, if they are tested positive, they should stay home and rest. If they do test positive for COVID and are required to stay home, then they can engage as a passive learner in a class.
Yeah.
An additional question, District 36 is not having masks required on the playground and kids can mix cohorts playing outside. this person would like us to consider that that's the policy for District 36 as we make our decision.
Yeah, and I think as of, and Tim and Caitlin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but our understanding has been, and obviously things continue to change, that outdoors the kids were not going to be required to have masks. Is that correct?
That's correct, Tom.
So we will, we'll add that onto the agenda for the next medical team meeting. But at this point, the general guidance has been that outdoors, not needing to wear masks is sufficient. And we're hoping that that's the case because kids need the chance to take their mask off and run around and be kids. So Mary, I think if there's one last question, let's do that. And then I will put the slide back up on the screen that shows people where they can get their further questions answered.
No more questions, just a couple of comments about thanking us for our balanced and logical approach to things.
Well, thank you. That's very nice. Obviously, this is not where any of us quite expected we were going to be in June. But I'm very happy that all of the things that we used successfully last year are still tools in our toolkit, and will continue to evolve. We will do our very best to communicate well, to follow the science and get the best guidance from our medical team, and try not to make any changes that would be disruptive if we don't have to. But if we do have to, we're not afraid. So I think we're going to have a great start to the year. We're really excited to see all of those who are having. Actually, Mary, you need to make me the host one more time so I can share my screen at the end. We're excited for the orientations that are happening. It was great to see the 9th graders today. We're looking forward to seeing our lower school friends on Thursday and Friday. And if you do have further questions, so here's where we are. We're doing meetings and orientations. We have our half day of lower school on Thursday, and full day on Friday, and then full day for middle and upper on Monday. Don't forget that we have no school on Labor Day and the day after for Rosh Hashanah. That's for chat. And okay, there's one more slide. Why is it not advancing? Okay, well, I guess the last answer is you'll get more by email tomorrow with details around all of these topics. And as always, if you have questions following those further communications, please feel free to reach out to covid@nscds.org. That'll go automatically to me and Mary and Jamie and Cindy. If you have questions about the academic program or extracurricular program, you can also send emails to these folks here on the left side of the screen for the lower, middle, and upper schools. But I hope you all have a wonderful night, and we look forward to partnering with you and working really hard to make it a great year. So have a great night, everyone.